Sometimes I forget the depths of the stupidity of the individuals that I have had the embarrassment of calling my lawmakers. But every now and again, there's a story that reminds you of just how insane they are. The House on Thursday approved a resolution denouncing socialism in a bipartisan vote that fractured the Democratic caucus. The resolution overwhelmingly cleared the chamber in a 328 to 86 to 14 vote. The majority of Democrats, 109 of them, voted with all Republicans for the resolution, while 86 voted against it and 14 voted present. The measure, which runs 3 pages, says socialist ideology necessitates a concentration of power that has time and time again collapsed into communist regimes, totalitarian rule, and brutal dictatorships. It argues that many of the greatest crimes in history were committed by socialist ideologues, mentioning Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, Fidel Castro, Pol Pot, Kim Jong Kim Jong Un, Daniel Ortega, Hugo Chavez, and Nicolas Maduro, and it lists atrocious atrocities committed under socialist regimes. Congress denounces socialism in all its forms and opposes the implementation of socialist policies in the United States of America, the resolution reads. When introducing the measure, the office of Representative Maria Elvira Salazar, Republican of Florida, a sponsor of the resolution, said passing it would make a bold statement that the People's House unequivocally denounces this cruel and unjust ideology. It would also ensure the United States commits to never begin to normalize the implementation of socialist policies that inevitably lead to economic ruin and political authoritarianism, Salazar's office said in a statement. Several Democrats who voted against the resolution expressed concerns regarding the future of Social Security and Medicare. They noted that Republicans on the Rules Committee rejected an amendment proposed by Representative Mark Takano, which sought to clarify the opposition to the implementation of socialist policies in the U.S. does not include federal programs like Medicare and Social Security. Republicans are pushing for spending cuts to be linked to a debt ceiling increase, and some have floated cuts to entitlement programs. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, however, has said cuts to the two federal programs are off the table. Here's what this is really about. More and more members on the other side of the aisle are calling for cuts to Social Security and Medicare, and many have referred to these programs as socialism throughout their existence. Representative Mark Pocan, Democrat of Wisconsin, said on the House floor during the debate. The other night in the Rules Committee, they showed their cards. Republicans refused an amendment to declare that Social Security and Medicare is not socialism. This resolution is little about intelligent discourse and everything to do about laying the groundwork to cut Social Security and Medicare, he added. Additionally, some Democrats who vote against the measure have been described as Democratic Socialists. Representatives Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Cori Bush were all endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America in the 2022 cycle. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who support the resolution, condemned socialist autocrats during a speech on the House floor before taking aim at U.S. leaders who attack democratic elections and other American programs. I rise to condemn all socialist autocrats who place power and wealth over their own citizens. Yet this resolution ignores some of their worst evils, then falls silent while American leaders mimic their cruel tactics, she said. Let's condemn socialist abuses, yes, but leaders on this very floor seek to overturn democratic elections, confiscate long-held rights, and gut programs our families, veterans, and service members need, she added. Representative Teresa Ledger Fernandez, who voted present, denounced socialism on the House floor, but criticized House Republicans for spending time on that resolution and not other matters. I absolutely denounce the brutal communist regimes of Castro, Maduro, Stalin, and other dictators in the whereas clause of this resolution. But sadly, instead of spending our precious moments in the People's House expanding opportunity for hardworking Americans, supporting ranchers, farmers, and rural communities, lowering healthcare costs, and strengthening Social Security and Medicare, we're spending hours, actually days, in pure political theater. And that's exactly what it was. Isn't it sad that the U.S. is a country where you have, and I did another video about this, 4% of the world's population lives in this country, but almost half the mass shootings occur here. You have people with 63% living paycheck to paycheck, and instead of addressing any of this with a discussion or with some kind of proposal, I'm seeing within the first month of the, actually less than the first month, because this session of Congress started before after the 4th of last month. So in less than one full month of having the House, this is what the Republicans choose to prioritize passing and declaring and making their mark about. Now, I look at some of the things that were said by these people, and I almost feel like what do you call it? A wind-up doll, a broken record, because we've explained before that socialism is not limited, and especially the one that is preached by people like Sanders, AOC, whether you like her or not. It has nothing to do with consuming power for yourself or having a brutal regime. I mean, for God's sakes, and this, I'm glad that Pocan mentioned this. Social Security and Medicare are socialist programs, a safety net to help people, to help the most poor and destitute. I mean, they're the complete opposite of a brutal regime. And then it's like you read the stuff that's said here, right? And there's one part in particular that I almost fell out of my chair when I read this the first time. You have an individual, and I'm not going to pretend I know every member of the House, because there's so many of them and they come and go. They're a dime a dozen at this point. But this Salazar member says passing the resolution would make a bold statement that the People's House unequivocally denounces this cruel and unjust ideology. Now, they'll tend to call something like single-payer socialism, right? But in Canada, they have single-payer. They have a decentralized, universal, publicly funded healthcare system that is paid for by the people and helps the people. And Canada is an ally of the United States. It's a country that we have deep ties to. So are they running a cruel and unjust regime? No, they're not. They actually evolved past this issue of not being able to give people the assistance they need with regard to their health a long time ago. We're still stuck in the for-profit era, which is where you have the price gougers who take some medicine that's like $10 in another country, they bring it over here and make it $100. We're all for that. All in the name of economic promise and growth and freedom and all the rest of this garbage. But really what it is that these people don't want to acknowledge that when you have a government that's main purpose, as I believe it should be, is to help the people, to do things that benefit them, they're against it. They wanted to just sit there and not have any involvement in the lives of the people. This is why they're against Social Security. This is why they're against Medicare. They're not going to try to do much to it because they know it's a very popular program that has stood the test of time. But any new attempt to actually give people things that they should have, that can be publicly funded, you won't see it. This is why, as the U.S. has been completely fine with paying for children to go to school from kindergarten to 12th grade, it's a no-brainer. They'll never, these lawmakers that is, be okay with implementing the same type of system for these price gouging, ridiculously priced colleges. And none of it is because if you make college free or allow people to have free healthcare like they do in other countries like Canada or Sweden or Denmark, we will now have this despotic regime, because none of that stuff is not related to what we're talking about. We're talking about basic reforms to a garbage system that costs too goddamn much for any normal person to be able to pay off by themselves. But instead of talking about those issues, and hey, I'm for decreasing the price on this costs too much, I agree. They'd rather start talking about Maduro and despotic regimes and dictators. And it's like, this has nothing to do with what's being addressed here. Canada is not a dictatorship, and they've had single payer healthcare for over 50 years. So what a dumb resolution. And it just reminds you that these people are not serious about passing anything or fixing anything or solving anything. They want to have these little victories where they condemn stuff that, you know, someone likes or that's helping somebody, and have no solution of their own. Because like I said, if they ever get their wet dream of getting rid of Social Security and Medicare, they're not going to replace with anything that's actually worth a damn. You saw the same thing when they tried to get rid of Obamacare, where their healthcare plan was so bad, they members of their own party voted against it. Trump care. So it's just sad that you have all of these issues that have been fixed in other countries through socialist programs, again, like single payer, like free college, that are, to some extent, the same thing here with Social Security and Medicare and having free school from K to 12. Again, ignoring Catholic schools, for example. But it's really sad that the U.S. is a country that's capitalist but has socialist elements to it that people are completely fine with. But then the lawmakers are trying to warn you of the evils of socialism and how it's going to destroy the things that we have in place. When in fact, the system you have in place is crumbling as we watch. You really think your capitalist system, where the majority of people that live in that country are living paycheck to paycheck, is good? You think that's a victory? So, like I said, this resolution just reminds me of why I'm embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed being American, but I'm embarrassed of my lawmakers. I think they're jokes. I think most of the time they're just there to get a quick check and serve their donor and fearmonger, and pretty much at this point just run like a modern version of the Red Scare, where we're not talking about issues or fixing anyone's life or improving the quality of living of our people. It's all just, again, political theater, and trying to coast your way to the next election. It's really pathetic. But that's, I guess, we got what's coming to us when people don't educate themselves about this stuff and they believe anything they see on TV. They'll fall for it. I mean, I watched Fox a few days ago, and I've been ignoring them for years because I just accepted they're just a complete waste of time. I only watch them if I want to see a funny reaction to something. And they had a commentator. They were talking about Haley, the former South Carolina governor, getting in the presidential election, and they had a commentator who said Sanders talks about socialism and inequality, wealth inequality, but then he has 3 houses. Like, so what does that have to do with his stance? If I have 2 homes and I say, yeah, there's something wrong when 63% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, how does that obfuscate from my point? I'm not anti multiple houses being owned by one person. It's what I said. It's weird. And again, none of this is actually based around addressing what people who advocate for changes in U.S. policy from a left wing or progressive standpoint are actually saying. It's just people taking the word socialist or socialism and running with it to such an extent that they hope that they by throwing this word around, they can scare people off from supporting you or from listening to you. And it's sad that you think you're talking to adults, but these are basically just children in suits. Children in suits who get pat on the head by their donors who they listen to and fight against any policy that can actually help people for that very reason. Like I said, we don't have free college, not because we can't afford it, because like I said, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars every single year on all these different wars that never get won. We don't have it because these for-profit schools are benefiting from people being in debt and not being able to afford going to these stupid places. We don't have single payer, not because the U.S. can't afford to. I mean, like I said, that's their claim every time. But it's not because it's going to cost us trillions of dollars that we will never make. No, it's because you have a for-profit healthcare system that donates to politicians so they can vote against any measures that would improve the healthcare system in the U.S. So when they get medicine from another country, they can price gouge Americans over it because we have no way of being able to stop them from doing that, thanks to our lawmakers who are in their pockets. So yeah, we're pretty much run by a bunch of corporate crooks that just they're lining their pockets while they run the Red Scare.